can get your laptop up when you get a chance. Where was it?
Underneath the laptop bag.
Thanks.
Hey, good morning. Hi. Oh, yes.
I just realized I don't have any like text. Oh, for this. Okay, why? Probably not.
Franklin?
Yeah, I don't know why this one is showing Franklin Park. I'm trying to get this. I got YouTube streaming fine. Connecting for Periscope still. I think I'll just say, because my stream's why I'm having problems here. Hmm? Oh yeah, if you can, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I just put this right here. You have your battery for this thing? I mean, your plug?
Do I have one?
Your plug for this thing?
Heck no. I do have.
Okay, cool.
Well, I need probably right now.
Is one of you, are you staying with the camera or just sitting?
I'm staying with camera.
Oh, okay. So
Do you need my chair?
Not during that. Okay.
check. Podium mic check. Audio check for podium mic. Hey, hey, hey. We are checking 1, checking 2, check 3, check 4. Hey, hey, hey. Podium mic. Podium mic. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey, hey, hey. Is it a little low?
We're going to ask folks to please come and get a seat. We're going to start in a minute or less. You can actually bring your food in. Ellen McCarthy, can you take a seat? Greg Myers, Senthil Sankaran, Steve Green, Jerry Whitcomb, Andrew Trublad, Joe Sternley. Joe has to actually finish his breakfast. He was trained well, raised well. So good morning, everyone. And welcome to our annual Downtown DC Business Improvement District State of the Downtown Forum. Downtown DC BID has been doing this forum for well over a decade, and we continue to be appreciative of the support that the museum provides to the Downtown DC BID in making this wonderful space available for our forum. So join me in thanking our hosts, the museum. And thank you for joining us here today. So I was told to say that we will be live streaming this event. I don't really know what that means. But we're using something called a hashtag DowntownDC. It's a joke. I really know what it means. So we have a very special program for you, including a great panel that will be discussing the state of downtown. We've produced a wonderful report. We have to say it's wonderful because we produced it. It's on your chair, but seriously, this time it is really wonderful. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the findings over the past year in the various sectors here in DC and downtown DC. We have a number of special guests in our midst. We wouldn't single them all out because we will be spending the entire day doing that. But we wanted to say welcome to those who took time out from their busy political careers, etc., to be here today. At a high level, I want to acknowledge a number of our partners who have been working with us for 20 years or so in the Downtown DC BID, the National Park Service. I've seen a couple of my friends, including Peter May from Park Service, GSA, who will be on the panel, but also in the audience, Metropolitan Police Department, the Park Police, the CFO's office, the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and actually the entire government of the District of Columbia. So thank you so much for your partnership over the past 20 years, and particularly over the last year. Our first speaker this morning is no stranger to you. He's the council member from Ward 2, Jack Evans. Jack actually was very instrumental with Joe Sternley and a few others in getting the legislation in place that started bids here in Washington, D.C. So, Jack, I'll welcome you this time to bring a few remarks.
Thank you, Neil, and good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning. What a beautiful day in the district, isn't it? Look outside here. At least it's not raining, but it is freezing. End of April, that's hard to believe. So thank you for having me here today, and thank you all for coming out to talk about the state of our downtown. And I thought I would spend just a brief moment in the beginning talking a little bit about the history of how we got here. But before I do that, let's give the people in the BID, particularly Neil Albert, your head right here, a big round of applause. Thank you for all you're doing and all you continue to do for downtown and for the whole District of Columbia. So it's been an interesting journey. I came on the council, as many of you know, a long time ago in 1991. I'm the longest serving council member in the history of the District of Columbia. So there you have it. I've seen the whole movie from here to there. And when I came on the council in 1991, The District of Columbia was a struggling city. I don't want to offend anybody from these other cities, but we were in kind of the Baltimore, Cleveland, Detroit area. Our downtown was largely deserted after 5 o'clock, certainly deserted on weekends. Our city population was falling down to about 520,000 people leaving, businesses leaving. We really were a city that was on the brink, and it got worse from there. By 1995, the finances were in such chaos that the control board had to come in and start to reorganize the city. And I would say it was toward the late 1990s when Tony Williams got elected mayor and Linda Kropp was chairman of the council. I became the finance chair. Nat Gandhi was our CFO. You know, we had to sit down with everyone and figure out what can we do here. And today, I would say we are the most dynamic city in America, barring none. And that is really witnessed by kind of the Amazon competition, where a huge company in America is looking for a new headquarters city, and every indication I have is we're certainly one of the final 3 or 4 cities and could actually win this thing, something that was not even contemplated back in the day. So what happened? How did this happen? And I will tell you one thing, it wasn't by luck and it wasn't by chance that somehow the District of Columbia has turned out to be the great city that it is. I'll start with the bids. When I first got on the council, it was one of the first bills I introduced, business improvement districts. Got the idea from some people up in New York City where they had the Times Square bid. Philadelphia had the Center City bid, and they were very successful. And we were looking for ideas of how to rejuvenate our downtown. And in true district fashion, I introduced the bill in 1991, and it failed. Didn't pass. Couldn't get it out of the committee. And Joe Sterling was mentioned, and Joe wrote the thing, and he was working with Charlene at the time, Jarvis, who did a great job. Reintroduced it again in 94 and failed again. Couldn't get it done. Finally, in 1996, we got the bill passed, only on the condition that any bids formed in the city had to be in Ward 2. It's the only way I got it passed. Isn't that amazing? And even to today, when you try and form a bid somewhere that's not in Ward 2, you have to get special legislation because the law prevents it from being anywhere than in Ward 2. So that's how we got it done. And it was really led by Georgetown, but they couldn't get their act together. So after the legislation passed, the downtown bid actually became the very first bid, then followed by Golden Triangle, then by Georgetown and others across the city. And it's one of the most successful concepts ever devised. And it was started out, you know, the clean and safe. You know, if you're going to rebuild the downtown and you're a business, what do you want? Well, you'd like outside your store to be clean. You don't have trash all over the place. And the city just wasn't back in those days able to take care of that. So clean was an idea. Every couple hours, somebody would come by and pick up the trash. And on weekends, when those cans were overflowing, we'd take those cans and empty them so that Monday morning everything looked pretty good. And then safe. You want your customers to feel like they're not going to get robbed on the way to your store or something like that. And so the idea of the individuals with the uniforms walking around and being able to actually communicate with the Metropolitan Police and to be able to be tour guides in many respects and help people out who can't find their way around, just to create a friendly environment. Those were the concepts behind the bid. And it worked. And then the bids certainly expanded beyond that into more marketing terms and a lot of other activities. But it was laid the groundwork for kind of how we're going to reestablish our downtown. And then the whole alphabet soup things came up. TIFs, tax increment financing. I went to Chicago and studied what they were doing in Chicago about leveraging property that you're getting so much tax on it, but somebody is willing to develop that property. You use the incremental income tax or property tax that comes in to help them finance that development. And that was, again, a concept that was opposed a lot, but we managed to get it passed. And it's been, again, one of the most successful things we've ever done here, using the tax increment financing to get projects built. And then the big scale projects were another thing we were looking at. You know, we didn't have, 1996 became a date I will never forget when we became the only American city, maybe large American city, that didn't have one professional sports franchise playing in our borders. The Redskins left that year, the Bullets they were called, and the Caps were playing out in Landover, and we didn't have anybody else, no baseball team, no nothing. And that's an astonishing situation for a city to find itself in. So it became one challenge of mine to get them all back. And so the Verizon Center, the MCI Center at the time, the Verizon Center now, the Capital One Arena became something that we took a hard look at. And Abe Poland, God rest his soul, was just a champion in supporting moving the teams back downtown at a time when downtown was dangerous, and agreeing to pay for the arena. And that was a real catalyst in that part of downtown that was a barely 8-5 vote on the council. I cannot tell you the opposition to building that downtown. It wouldn't fit. It was the wrong place, and you're giving money to billionaires. You know all the arguments. And without a doubt, it's become one of the most successful downtown arenas in America. But it was a fight to get there. In the convention center, we had this rundown, dilapidated convention center. The idea is we need to build a new convention center. And the discussions, and again, Joe was so helpful in that, the discussions that went on to build our brand new convention center, and the opposition was astonishing. I had a woman follow me around in a white elephant costume for 2 years, everywhere I went, interrupting every speech I gave. Where's Linda Green? And she was my chief of staff at the time. Linda remembers, remember? Her name was Debbie Hammerhand, and she followed me around, and we barely could get that through the city council. But we did. And again, Charlene Jarvis was such a champion as the economic development person at the time. And we got this new convention center built. When the hotel finally arrived 10 years later, we finally got that done. That was a real struggle. It's one of the most successful convention complexes, center and hotel, in the nation. And then the champion of all, the baseball stadium. It's not in downtown, but I just have to talk about it for 30 seconds because the baseball stadium was the most challenging project I've ever had. 7-6 vote on the council 12 times. And it wasn't always the same 7 people. You had to go around and find these people. Drag them. Come on, you got to vote for this thing. You know, we're going to pay $610 million of taxpayer money. We're going to build the whole thing ourselves. And it was the only way that MLB, Major League Baseball, owned the team at the time, the Montreal Expos. And they would not come to a city unless you agreed to pay for the whole stadium. And the reason is then they wanted to sell the team and get the most money they could. They didn't want to have to sell it to somebody who had to build a stadium. So that was kind of the logic behind it. And we agreed to do it. And we did it. And we built the stadium. And the team came here. And I was talking to Michael Stevens the other day. I don't know if he's here. He's head of the bid down in southeast, southwest there. Every year now, we get, in that baseball stadium area, $400 million in property taxes alone. You add the sales and the income tax generated in that area, and you have coming into the city coffers every year over $600 million. I get 100% return on my investment every year. Was that a good deal or a bad deal? I mean, can you believe this? And what it's done for the waterfront. Created a whole new city down there. And so I threw all this out saying these were hard things that we had to fight our way through. It took a lot of political courage. People actually lost their jobs based on that, but they were decisions that had to be made in order to bring the town back. All of you in the room who are in development or have businesses, I want to thank you for believing in us. For those who stayed, thank you. For those who came back, thank you for that too, because it started to take off. And now you've seen the restaurants, the housing downtown, everything that it was a catalyst for the things we talked about. And what that's done is it increased the revenues for the city dramatically. The budget today of the District of Columbia, which we're going to vote on in a couple of weeks, is $14.5 billion. It's the largest budget in the history of the city. We will spend more money this year than we ever have in the history of the city. Jeff DeWitt, our CFO, is here. He's going to spend that money, all of it. No, he's going to keep track. I'm going to spend it. You're right. He's going to collect it. I forgot that. You have a different role than I do. So, but you'll be hearing from Jeff. And we're doing well. I mean, we're bringing a lot of money into the city. And it goes for the things that are important to us. It goes for education. It goes for affordable housing. It goes to help people who are on our streets or people who are struggling in our society. And we have it because we were able to change the downtown and make it work. So there's a lot of credit that goes around to doing that. But we have to be ever vigilant as we go forward. It's a fragile economy in which we live. Things can turn on us. If we pass, and this is something on the city council and something all of you need to be aware of, which you are. If we pass laws that make it hard for business to stay here, business will leave. When you pile on you know, the paid family leave, the $15 minimum wage, the sick and safe bill, and I can go on and on. There's 15 things that we are looking at or pass. All of them individually seem like great ideas until you put the collection together and a business says to me, my margin is gone. I can't be here any longer because I can't make any money. I can go across the river where they don't have any of those things and do just as well. So that's where we have to be careful when we're doing so well. Sometimes I say the problem the district has today is we have too much money. So we're not careful in our spending. And that's probably what makes me crazy the most as the finance chair, is we spend a lot of money and we don't get the results back for the money we spend. That's what we have to be careful of going forward. Now, one last thing I want to talk about, because it's a great day here today. Last year when I spoke, I told I was a little bit late because I took Metro, you know. But I don't make that joke anymore. I don't make that joke anymore because Metro's getting better. And as many of you know, I am chairman of the board of Metro. I have been now for 2.5 years. I think because nobody else wants to be chairman of the board of Metro, so I just stay on and on we go. But in all seriousness, it is a dramatic moment in the region this week, next week, last week, this time period, because for the first time in 40 years, we have gotten the agreement in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia to have a dedicated funding source for Metro. That is an enormous achievement for our region. Metro has two major fundamental flaws. It was built as a two-track system. You know, we only have 2 tracks, so we have to close down at night to repair it and causes all kinds of problems. And the other flaw was no dedicated funding source. The other 5 major systems in America all had one. So we have that now in place. We are going to get the $500 million, which we can leverage for $1.5 billion a year, to get the money necessary to repair Metro. So we still have a long way to go, because somebody said, "Ah, this is great. We're done. We're finished." And I always use the Winston Churchill quote when somebody says that to me, and I'll say it very quick. After the British Army stopped the German Army for the first time in World War II in 1942 at the Battle of El Alamein in Libya, they asked Winston Churchill, you know, "What do you think about this? Is this the end?" He said, "The end? It's not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. It's perhaps the end of the beginning." And I think that's so appropriate for Metro, because it is perhaps the end of the beginning. We have a long way to go to get this thing fixed. We have a lot of challenges, some we haven't met yet. We're going to need billions of dollars more if we're going to build a new tunnel, if we're going to fix the red line, if we're going to increase our inspector general. We have a $3 billion unfunded pension liability and OPED problem right now. All of these issues haven't been dealt with. But at least we have a start to get it fixed. Now, finally, 2 things, and I brought it up last year, I'm going to bring it up again. I represent Ward 2, I represent where we are now, and everything you look at is in my ward. Isn't that beautiful? But there are things that need to get done. Pennsylvania Avenue. So I have the attention here. I have GSA here. Peter May from the National Park Service, who I enjoy working with. Peter, thank you for all you do. Scott, who's new from GSA. Pennsylvania Avenue, one of the worst decisions made when Newt Gingrich was around was getting rid of the PADC. What was the PADC? The Pennsylvania Avenue Development Corporation, which really led to Pennsylvania Avenue going from this nightmare when John Kennedy was taking his inaugural parade to what it is today, which is much better, but still has a long way to go. When PADC was dissolved, the jurisdiction for the avenue was split into 3. The roads are ours. The sidewalks are the Park Service, and the buildings are GSA. And we have studied for a long time Pennsylvania Avenue to make it the Champs-Élysées as opposed to really an 8-lane highway where there's nobody there. And how do we do that? And we have to bring this to a conclusion. We've studied it forever. How do we revitalize the main avenue in our city? How do we get cafes on the sidewalks that the Park Service can't do because they own the sidewalks? How do we get them in the district's inventory so we can do it? How do we spruce it up? How do we bring life to an avenue that right now doesn't have that life? And we can do it. We just have to bring it together. So I challenged all of us in the room. Help me get Pennsylvania Avenue back on track. We've studied it to death. We know what it is. How do we move it forward and get it fixed? Franklin Square is the other one. Franklin Square is the biggest park right in the center of our city. Why can't we get this done? And I know we're close. I know we're in agreements to try and get it taken care of. But why can't we get this done so that we can revitalize some of these great assets that are in our city, that are in my ward, that I've worked on for 27 years. Now, one of the things I learned in this job, just stick around long enough, you'll outlast everybody, you know, and that's one of my strategies. I'll outlast everybody and get things done. But having said that, I'm getting older too. So I want to bring some of these things to a conclusion and really just continue to make the District of Columbia terrific. So thank you very much. I talked long more than my time, but I thought it was a good opportunity to share some of the things that are happening in our city. So keep up the good work. Thanks for having confidence in it, and I look forward to having the panel discussion today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jack. I also want to introduce Councilmember Anita Bonds, who I saw earlier in the room. If you're still here, Anita, thanks for being here. So we wanted to just spend a few minutes providing you with some highlights of 2017 from the BID's perspective. And I have asked, and he's accepted, one of our board committee members, Michael McCarthy, to do that for us. Michael has been on the Downtown DC board for quite some while, but he has a day job. And in his day job, he's vice president and director of acquisitions for Quadrangle Development Corporation. Michael served as the chair of our board in the past and continues to serve on the executive committee. So at this time, I'm going to invite Michael to come up and give an overview of the report.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Councilmember Evans. It's always great to hear, as a native Washingtonian, the journey that we've all been on. I think it's an amazing opportunity for the people who work for the BID, including any of the SAMs that might be in the room today. You may not see it on a daily basis, but you are executing the dream. And so when you come into work, I hope you can appreciate the contribution that you're actually making, and I think how far the city has come from, I think back to when I was walking from Gonzaga High School in 1973 to my father's office at 1312 Mass Avenue, and what a different city we live in today. So thank you to all the members of the BID. So with that, good morning. You now have on your chairs a copy of the latest State of the Downtown report, which is the definitive report on downtown DC's economy and market sectors. This report has been produced annually by the Downtown DC BID since 2003 and offers detailed information on downtown DC's important role in the city and in the region. This year's theme is Fueling the Engine, and this theme was chosen given the continued importance that downtown DC provides for the city's economy amid growing regional competition. Thanks to the effort of so many in this room, including the Downtown DC BID staff, those red and black uniformed safety, hospitality, and maintenance ambassadors continue to support the work that we do. Downtown DC today is clean, safe, and welcoming for everyone. It remains the engine for the district and for the region. As you'll see in the report, 2017 represents another banner year for Downtown DC across many sectors. But clearly this was not without its challenges. For Quadrangle, for my firm, 2017 was a year of growth in downtown DC as progress continued on our One Freedom Plaza. Meaningful contribution from the city to one of our landmarks. Downtown DC in 2017 continued to be the largest regional employment center with 188,000 jobs, which amounts to 24% of the share of the region's employment. Downtown DC also set a citywide record last year with the sale again of 900 G Street. Vacancy rates. One initiative the bid is undertaking with the city and in conjunction with the Golden Triangle bid is support for an office to residential conversion pilot, which will work to reduce aging and vacant office space and help downtown DC to become more competitive residential area. No new residential units have opened in the downtown DC since the opening of City Center in 2013. On residential news front, one item of note is that the Wah Luck House in Chinatown will remain Section 8 housing after the tenants there recently won the opportunity to purchase the building through TOPA for $38 million. The building is now set to undergo a $39 million renovation. In other sectors, development is bringing exciting new projects to downtown DC. At the end of 2017, 16 projects in downtown DC were under construction with a This year will bring more development milestones with the opening of Capitol Crossings, 200 Mass Avenue project, and Midtown Center, which is Fannie Mae's new headquarters. 4 museums are planned in downtown DC. The Children's Museum at the Reagan Building, Planet World at the Franklin Square, the National Law Enforcement Museum, and the Milken Institute Museum of American Education. These museums add to the existing culture and entertainment offerings in downtown DC, one reason we remain a premier destination. In 2017, 8.2 million people visited the downtown DC bid venues, which include the Capital One Arena and 8 performing arts venues, 10 museums. At Capital One Arena alone, 2.5 million attendees went to 231 events last year. Monumental Sports and Entertainment recently announced the investment of $40 million in the fan experience at Capital One, including new seating, state-of-the-art led by the Warner and National Theaters. We also learned in 2017 of the retirement of Michael Kahn of the Shakespeare Theater and Howard Shawitz of the Woolly Mammoth. The National Portrait Gallery and the Smithsonian's American Art Museum led downtown DC in museum attendance once again with 1.3 million visitors. While downtown DC's cultural offerings continue to be one reason why we're at the top, why we are continued to be considered a top tourist destination, conventions continue to fill hotel rooms and generate revenue for downtown DC. Destination DC generated 1.2 million room nights for the district in 2000. Of 3.8 million square feet is effectively the size of a large regional mall. But we and our stakeholders recognize the need to better market and to better attract new retail opportunities to bolster our retail market. In 2017, the bid contracted with HRA Advisors and Docker and Alexander Retail Advisors to conduct a retail study to help inform how we can grow and improve our retail market. And we look forward to working with our partners to help make DC a superior downtown shopping destination. In 2017, downtown DC had 86 destination retail stores, including the new Sephora, Uniqlo, and Christoffel. I had to have that phonetically spelled because I didn't know what that was. And 166 destination restaurants. Downtown DC generates 28% of the city's restaurant and sales tax as well. Downtown DC's restaurant and cultural scenes continues to depend on public transportation and Metro for its success. That's why the lack of the late-night Metro transportation, originally put forth as a temporary measure under by the news of the regional agreement to create a $500 million annual dedicated funding source for Metro. Many of the 90,000 Metro customers served in downtown DC each day are greeted by our red and black uniform, safety, hospitality, and maintenance ambassadors known as SAMs. The downtown DC bid SAMs continue to provide core clean and safe functions to downtown DC, and to them we are extremely grateful. We expanded on that last year with increased beautification efforts, including the partnership with GSA to landscape 202 planters along Pennsylvania Avenue, new plantings at Freedom Plaza and Herald Square with the National Park Service, and our own public space beautification efforts through hanging flower baskets and our red bistro tables and chairs throughout the bid. The bid continues to innovate in public space. Last year, through a partnership with City Center DC, the National Park Service, and the city, we brought you the fancy edible carnival sculptures. And we continue to explore new programming, building on our Downtown DC live concert series, bringing you outdoor Kung Fu movie festival on Freedom Plaza and other activities, of course. Our Downtown DC holiday market, which draws approximately 200,000 customers per year. We continue to be encouraged by the steps being taken by the National Park Service to lease Franklin Park to the city, after which it will be operated and managed by the bid. That pretty well concludes the overview of the presentation. As I said, copies on your chairs, and we look forward to any feedback you might have as you have the chance to review. That's next up. We have an exciting panel of experts who will discuss this year's report. On each of your chairs, we have placed an index card. If you have a question for the panel, please write it down, and our staff will be coming around and collecting those as the panel wraps up. As time allows, at the end of our program, we'll take questions from the audience. Now, for our panelists. First, please welcome the Regional Director of the National Capital Region of the General Services Administration, Scott Anderson. President and CEO of Theater Washington, Amy Austin. Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, Brian Keener. The district's Chief Financial Officer, Jeffrey DeWitt. President, CEO of the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership, Keith Sellers. And last but certainly not least, please welcome back Neil Albert, our moderator for this morning's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. So we do have a really great panel this morning. As Michael said earlier, we do have some cards on the chair. If you have any pressing, burning questions, don't stand up and ask. Just write it, and someone will come around and take it from you. Thank you to our panelists for being willing to participate on our panel this morning. As I've said in my opening comments, the BID has been doing this kind of forum for over the last decade, and we've been lucky to have this format at least for the last decade. So let me start by asking a general question to the panel. You saw the overview, you listened to the overview of the report. I'm sure all of you read the report in detail because you got an advanced copy. Did anything in the State of Downtown report surprise you or give you cause for concern? And why don't I start with you, Keith?
Great question. Nothing really surprised me. I was very excited about the direction the bid is going, and some of the successes that the bid has had over the past year, and looking forward to the future.
Thank you. Jeff?
You know, the number that the amount of construction that's going on, which as a CFO excites me because it means property taxes, but and that is the over $2 billion of construction that's going right now, and another $400 million or so that's coming in 2018. And, you know, because I like to count things, I think I saw 12 cranes just looking out this window just a minute ago. That, and the other one, it surprises me, but it pleases you. I spend a lot of time downtown on the weekends. I live at 3rd and H, not far away. So it's 2 metros. I do ride the metro, by the way. It's 2 stops away to get to the gallery place. And so, the theaters, the movies, and all the things the restaurants that are downtown. And the crime's down 25%. That, I already feel safe when I come downtown, and to find out from the report it's down another 25% is a testimony to our public safety people and all the people that do that. So the crime's even lower, even though I already feel safe downtown. That was a surprising thing when I read the report.
Great. Deputy Mayor Cantor?
Yeah, I think sort of the stick-to-itiveness, if that's a word, the stickiness of retail, the fact that retail continues to be strong. We know that there's going to be turnover either with businesses or restaurants and so forth, but the fact that retail continues to be an important component of the downtown area, because that's one of the reasons why visitors and people are continuing to come to the downtown area, continues to be important. And then, maybe not something that surprises me, but the continued sort of federal retraction in terms of office space, and the general trends around even professional services in terms of consolidation, which continue to put pressure on our office market. I know that that's one of the things that the bid has been focused on, and that's something that the city cares a lot about too.
Thank you. Amy?
I'm not sure about anybody else, but I was really surprised to see the $1,253 square foot price.
1,273.
73. Which was astonishing. And I guess I wasn't surprised to see, how the downtown is served by the arts community and all the performance spaces that you have here.
And Scott?
For me, it was just a sense of real vibrance in the city, and just all the things that are happening with the museums, the development, and where we're headed. It was very exciting to read this. I moved up here in 2003, and it is completely transformed.
Thank you. So let me start with you, Scott, and asking some specific questions. Scott has an interesting background. Scott's been part of the development of the George Washington University campus for a number of years before joining GSA, so he has both the private sector and the public sector perspective on development. Interested in hearing from your point of view, GSA's outlook on densification. The Deputy Mayor touched on it a little bit in his comments. Would love to hear, if you can, as much as you can share, where GSA is thinking in terms of densification in downtown DC. For context, you have about 24 million square feet of either leased or owned space within the boundaries of downtown DC. We've talked about densification for the 2.5 years that I've been here. There's been some evidence of that in the FBI and Justice moving out to Noma and some other moves. So if you can talk globally about that, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. GSA supports densification. It's part of the thing that's on our radar. We're very interested in it. DOJ moved to another location up at Noma, and when it did, it reduced their footprint by 30%, and they saved $17 million a year, which is substantial for the taxpayer, and it's those type of deals that we're looking for. Our NCR facilities are along transit lines. We really don't like urban sprawl, so that's something that we're trying to reduce. And in FY17 and in the capital region, we reduced 1.1 million square feet of space, and really efficiency stayed where it was. We didn't see a difference. So we're headed in that direction. We support it, and it's something we believe in.
If you were to sort of look through the crystal ball 5 to 10 years from now, what would you project to be the federal presence in downtown DC?
Well, we currently have 100 million square feet in the NCR region. In downtown DC, we have 22 million right now. 16 million is owned GSA property, 6 million is leased. The reality is, this is federal headquarters. It's not going away. We'll always have a presence here. It'll be consistent. It may ebb and flow. We're look forward to working with other stakeholders and seeing if there's other opportunities with some redevelopment of some properties that come up. It's competitive out there. Our job is to get the best deal for the taxpayer. And also, really, a big part of our mission is to make sure, and one of the top parts of our mission is to make sure every agency works effectively and can do their mission, and the most we can reduce costs by on the rent side, it'll help them. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Amy, I'm going to turn to you and talk a little bit about theater and culture, and interested in learning a little bit from your perspective of the interrelationship between downtown DC and the success of the theater industry here in DC. How important is downtown DC to the success of the theater industry, and vice versa? How important do you think the theater industry is to the success of downtown DC?
Right. Well, the theaters, when you look at like Ford's Theater, for example, is bringing in 650,000 people a year to the city. There's also Shakespeare Theater and Woolly Mammoth and the National, which has been brought up. So there's all these cultural institutions, which actually were sort of first here, right? Like before there was the MCI Center, there was Shakespeare Theater. So these, the theaters are often the places that drive the community in the beginning. They're the first stakeholders. So I think they've been very important and continue to be very integral to the success of downtown. What they do is they keep people here at night, and they keep them busy before the show, they keep them busy after the show. So Shakespeare Theater, for example, does 400 performances, events during the year. So, that's more than one a day. So they're constantly open. They've constantly got something going on. They're constantly bringing people through the door from, internationally, as well as from the suburbs. So I think that the institutions, the cultural institutions, are serving downtown bid very well. I think the bid, when you hear about the empty office spaces, or that there's, is there some of that the development community can look at to bring in whoever the new players are in this field? Could we turn some of that space into more performing arts space, to keep the vibrancy here? So that's what I would say in the exchange part, to look harder. One of the other figures that's in the report is that 25% of the workers are in the bid. So how do we keep them here, working harder with these institutions to keep them here at night and keep them eating in the restaurants, paying the taxes, et cetera?
So theaters had a record attendance in 2017. In 2016, the attendance record was another record over 2015. So there's been a growing trend here in downtown DC of people really focusing and purposely attending our theaters and cultural institutions.
Right.
Is there anything you think we as a city could be doing, if the deputy mayor is sitting right next to you,
I know.
the CFO, to sort of sustain that growth for a long period of time?
Well, I think that the greatest need right now for the institutions is that what they need is, there's a proposal that Evans has put forward, for which we're very thankful, that would give 0.25% of sales revenue to the cultural institutions. So right now, there's a decline in federal funding, which won't surprise you, that many of them were getting, and now that's probably not coming back. And so what they need to know is that they can keep their spaces, that $1 million or more that went to National Theater the city gave, that was affectionately given through an earmark. It was a grant, but it was also an earmark. So there's no way for them to get infrastructure funding on a regular basis, and to know that they can count on the funds. So the new bill that Evans has put forth, and you've heard how successful he was with TIFs and other funding measures, I think this is something we all need to back. So what this would provide is monies that they can use to keep their spaces up, to get new seats, to do these kind of bigger projects, and they know that the money is coming year after year. So can we do that?
I was just going to say, that's a great lead-in, Neil.
So I promised the deputy mayor that there'll be no hard questions. So that was an easy question.
Sure.
So Keith Sellers, Keith has been heading the DC Economic Partnership for at least over 3 or 4 years now, Keith.
5 years.
5 years, but who's counting? One of the things that the partnership does is to really become the focal point for retail attraction here in Washington, D.C. This year, the city will be celebrating 20 years of participation in ICSC, that's the International Shopping Centers Convention. As Mayor Williams liked to tell it, when he first went out to ICSC, no one really wanted to talk to them. As Brian will tell you, Deputy Mayor Kenner will tell you, everyone wants to talk to DC these days. So Keith, 20 years later, what do you think is the direction of retail, not just in downtown DC, but in the city as a whole? And what do you think the role of the partnership and the Deputy Mayor's office should be going forward in attracting in retail attraction here in DC?
Great question. I wish I had a crystal ball where I could say the direction retail is going. Right now it's upside down. Jerry Whitcomb and I have debated this back and forth. Should the city continue to go to Las Vegas ICSC to attract retail? I think we should. I think that the city's efforts have gleaned a lot of great retailers. Apple was coming. We've been meeting with them over the past 10 years, as well as Wegmans for the past 12 years, which are huge wins for the city as far as jobs and tax revenue for the city. Right now, it's interesting that if you look at the grocery store industry, that's upside down. You have a lot of grocers who will be closing in DC, and a lot of them who won't be expanding. DC is doing really well in the downtown bid area, but we're really struggling for those emerging neighborhoods on the peripheral of the city. So I think we should still continue to go to ICSC for relationship reasons and to educate ourselves as well as retailers. I think there is opportunity for us to change our footprint. We may not necessarily meet what that looks like as far as take as big of a delegation to the conference, but still have a presence there. I think that retail industry is constantly evolving. I think what you're going to be seeing is still a huge trend towards food users, but not as many as far as services.
So it's a really good time to pivot to our Deputy Mayor, who I said I will provide some softball questions to. So the first softball question, Deputy Mayor Kenner, is Amazon. It's been in the news, and as I was telling someone earlier, it may have been you, very pleased to see sort of the regional approach taken by the governors and the mayor. And I personally believe if Amazon lands anywhere in this region, it's good for DC and it's good for the region. But you've been heavily involved in those conversations. Is there anything you can share with us? Inquiring minds would like to know.
Sure. Because I also see Dan Cernovitz sitting right there, so taking notes. But
Dan's taking notes, yeah.
I think that a lot of the information about Amazon has already been reported. They came here. We had a dinner with them, which was great. We were able to sort of show them, I think, Washington. The great thing, from my perspective about that, is that they know Washington. Many of the people had either lived here before or currently live here. Amazon Web Services literally has thousands of people that are in this region. The Amazon Web Services, one of their offices off of New Jersey Avenue, has hundreds of people who are here in Washington, D.C., in the Washington region. And so, and that's all before you get to Bezos and the Post and the House and so forth. And so, I think in a good way, we're a known quantity. I think that people have known about the fact about our public transportation system, about the quality of our sort of workforce here, about our world-class amenities, and we're happy to see that that Amazon is finding not only Washington D.C. but the Washington region as a part of it. One other thing I'll say about it is that, and I think the letter that was reported on yesterday shows that we literally there are 20 people, 20 jurisdictions that have been sort of selected for them to continue to talk to Amazon. We are the only place where we are talking to two other competitors. I don't think that Pittsburgh is talking to Chicago. I don't think that Philadelphia is talking to Raleigh or whatever it is. We are talking to Maryland and Virginia. I've had conversations with both of the commerce secretaries in both of the states. I've had conversations with both of the economic development officials in Arlington County and Montgomery County. And so, we feel like it is a benefit for the entire region if they come anywhere in the region. That does not preclude that we each have our own competitive advantages, and that we want to make sure that Amazon knows effectively the best foot forward for Washington, D.C. specifically. And I know that Arlington and the rest in Loudoun and Fairfax and the rest of Virginia feel that way. I know Montgomery County feels that way. But there is cooperation. I know that there's been a narrative that there isn't any cooperation at all betwixt us. And as I've always said, cooperation happens when there's common good that can come. And I think that we all recognize that if it comes anywhere, it's going to be a huge win for the region.
How would you handicap the city's chances? And what are the pluses and minuses of Amazon getting
He's
here?
right. He's writing, by the way.
Exactly. Another softball question. I would have, and I'm just throwing things out here, so I just want to make that 100% clear. When it first came out, I would have given us less than a 30% chance. And I think I still sort of give us less than a 30% chance. And when I say 30%, I mean the region, not just Washington specifically. And as sort of Jack was saying earlier, that percentage at about 30% is higher than any other time that the region or Washington has been able to attract a Fortune 5 company. We've never been this close to being able to do it. Something else that that Shonda Washington, Andrew Trueblood, Karima Woods, and many of the other people that are in our office that have been the forefront, Marie Whitaker, that have been at the forefront of putting the proposal together and having these conversations, is that it's not also just about Amazon. The mayor recently led a trip out to the West Coast, and so we talked to 37 companies. We are welcoming Yelp, who's taking more than 50,000 square feet in our downtown region. Uber's second largest headquarters outside of their sort of West Coast San Francisco offices is located right here in Washington, D.C. So we want to make sure that technology companies in particular, innovation companies, know that if they're thinking about expanding generally to the East Coast, that we feel like in Washington, D.C., we are the kind of place where people can be most impactful. Two quick stats that my folks in my office were very good to find and wanted to make sure that I said. This is on a JLL report. Since 2014, 42% of regional office space occupancy growth has been in the shared and co-working office space sector. That is why we care about technology and innovation companies, because they are increasingly driving our economy and our office vacancy rates. Regionally, tech and co-working sectors have provided the most growth in office, with 5 million square feet net absorption between 2010 and 2018, which happens to be about the same amount that the federal government has shrunk in office space in that time. So we are literally one for one losing federal and gaining it in tech and co-working. And so that is why, from our perspective, it's important that Amazon is great, and we're certainly going to pursue it, but I think that it does not preclude us from pursuing all those other companies that we know could benefit from being in D.C.
Thank you very much. Jeff, you are the city CFO, big responsibilities. We've had, Jack would say, 20 plus years of really good growth, surpluses. What keeps you up at night?
Softball.
Brian and I was a week ago today, the 25 largest cities in the United States, the University of Chicago pays to fly us all there for 2 days to get together. So I get to spend time with the 25 largest cities in the United States, their CFOs. It was just us and the students of the University of Chicago. And, we're in a place that, I'm not popular there because we're doing better than most of those places are. And our pensions are funded and are fully funded, and we don't have those challenges. So I think we need to understand how good it is here relative to the struggles the other cities have. But on that same side, what keeps me up at night, we do rely on continued growth of our tax base. And the downtown bid is important to that. And what drives growth? Dr. Lee, who's here today, and some of the people in the Office of Revenue Analysis, we have to continue to grow our economy. And so what keeps me up at night, okay, now we've finally gotten the 3 region areas to agree on a $500 million funding source, but now Metro has to execute that. We have to get the system safe and reliable, because people, if Amazon does come somewhere in the region, and all the people that will want to live downtown, which will be a great thing no matter whether they go in Maryland or Montgomery County, they're going to want to come and live in downtown DC. Are they going to be able to get there? So what keeps me up at night is the next phase, as I think Jack Evans said, this is the end of the beginning, is executing that and going forward. Because if you don't have good transportation, you don't have good affordable housing, you don't have good schools, all those things that government is responsible for, and the population doesn't continue to thrive and grow, then we'll be the places that I was talking to some of my colleagues where they're struggling with how to, city of Milwaukee, city of Detroit, some of those cities that were there that we're talking to. So I think what keeps me up at night is how do we keep this economic engine that has really taken off 20 years ago, how do we keep it fueled? And you got to fuel it. You got to have all those things that people demand and businesses demand to keep it going. And that is really, low crime, good transportation systems, fewer potholes, all the things that the mayor's budget and the council's budget is working on. It's that infrastructure, including the transportation, the schools, and all those types of things. And Brian does keep me up at night, too, by the way.
Brian does keep you up at night. So I'm sure you call upon to give advice to both the executive branch of the government and the legislative branch of the government on issues as it relates to fiscal policy, et cetera. Can you share with us 2 or 3 insights that you share with them? And do they take any of your advice?
Well, I don't want to disclose everything we yell about each other in private, but no, the office that I sit in is an independent, as you know, is an independent chief financial officer. So any legislative issues that are done, we have to certify the fiscal health of those, which is, again, unique in the country in terms of that role and responsibilities. But I have found, you'll see what I call crazy legislative ideas come forward every once in a while. It just happens everywhere. It happens a lot here.
Any examples?
No, not publicly. Because we like them not to go too far. So, but we will have discussions. And
Not willing to test the independence of the CFO.
Thank you. But we do have some pretty intense discussions with the door closed. And I think I've been here 4 years now, and for the most part, one, they know if they do them that they're not fiscally viable, that it's my responsibility to say they can't afford them. But when you're in closed doors and you're talking to, whether it's executive or Brian or a deputy mayor or a council member, people want to do the right thing. And I think we wouldn't be in the fiscal place we are today. I'm sure, some people will think we've made mistakes along the way and we've done some things that are, people don't agree with. But in total, we are in better financial shape than most any city in the country because in the end, we end up doing the right thing. But yes, I give my role, and I have to be very careful about this because it's an independent office, it's not elected, is to give policy advice, but ultimately it's my job to evaluate the policy, not set the policy. But do I give advice about the dangers of what this might do down the road and the things that you may need to look at, and or the immediate is this is just crazy, and if you do it, we're going to get in financial trouble, and we're going to have some public hearings that aren't going to go well. Yes, we have those discussions every once in a while.
Thank you.
But I'm not going to give you specifics.
No, I appreciate that. So, Scott, the FBI headquarters building has been in the news, I'd say, for at least the last 5 years. There's been on again, off again procurement activities on it. So, using the FBI headquarters as an example, what is the GSA sort of philosophy and approach to some of these sort of older reservations in downtown DC, like the Department of Labor building? What are the plans for them for the future, but the short-term future and the long-term future?
As you know, they're older facilities which were built some in the 30s. After that, there's structures that we have to keep up and maintain. We have not made any decisions on the Labor Department headquarters yet. We're still reviewing that and discussing that with the agency. There's a lot of things going on with other buildings as far as maintenance and keeping them up. We're looking for money to improve infrastructure in those, and that's kind of where we're at.
Right. So one other important GSA-owned property in downtown DC is the Webster School. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that's on 8th Street Northwest, not too far from City Center. Every developer in town that I talk to see it as a prime real estate opportunity. I know there was some sort of a solicitation put out a couple of years before you got there. Is there any information you can share with us? There are a number of developers in the room who, rather than asking me, could hear it directly from you.
Sure. We're working with DHS to initiate basically a housing study for consolidation for them. And it will be out of that study that we will determine factors that will direct our next steps with that building. The Webster School is part of that consolidation study with DHS, so that's where we're at.
Thank you. So, Amy, were you upset that Hamilton's first stop outside of New York wasn't D.C. and Chicago? And what does that say about the attractiveness?
It really should have come here next.
That's what I believe. So what can the city do? We have the mayor sitting in the audience. We have the deputy mayor on your left. What can the city do to sort of preempt that kind of stuff from happening? So there's been this sort of Hamilton sweepstake, and so we were sort of the second runner-up or the first runner-up. DC as a city. But what does that say for DC as a cultural city, a theater city? In your
well,
mind?
I think it just says that we were patient. So it is coming, as you must know, this summer, and the Kennedy Center sold probably 200,000 tickets in a couple days. So it's a very exciting show, and we're glad to finally have it here, since it takes, is about us and our government and who we are as immigrants. And it's really great theater. But, what I would say is there's great theater happening here all the time. So there's no reason to wait for Hamilton. You can see it every day in the number of places right here in downtown DC.
Exactly. So how do we keep that theater momentum growing? It's the question I asked you earlier today. So when Jack Evans was here, he talked about some of the incentives that he's put in place. But specifically for downtown DC as an organization,
right?
The bid. What can the bid do to support the excitement that occurs around theaters to advance theater attendance and things like that?
Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, one I touched upon earlier. It's really how to get the workers to understand what's around them, so that they want to go, are aware of, instead of just walking out of your building and going home at night, what other opportunities are around. So to the extent that the development community and the downtown bid can think through imaginative ways to connect those people with the institutions, I think would be good. There's also, we were also really fortunate that we have 90 theaters in this region. It's a very rich, dynamic theater town. So that is not as well known as it should be. You think of New York or you think of Chicago, but DC is really, has these rich cultural institutions that are nationally known, like Woolly Mammoth for Newark. Is one of the best in the country for that, and Shakespeare Theater, one of the best in the country for Shakespeare, both in downtown DC. So I think what we need to do then is think about who's coming up next and what spaces can they afford, where can we help host them, do arts overlays so that developers are consciously working and thinking about how they can incorporate performance spaces. You know, it doesn't have to be big spaces, 500 seats. They can be small 100-seat theaters, that can bring the new, whatever the new woolly mammoth is going to be in 30 years, to help them start cultivating who they are.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we won't have time for questions from the audience, but we do have time, I'm being told, for one other question, which I really want to ask either Brian Kenner or Keith Sellers, or both of you guys, to jump in on. The city has done a really great job in attracting tech industries over the last decade. Some of the efforts started in the Economic Partnership. Keith and his predecessor had a tech incentive program. The mayor, through 3 budgets, have not just only has put her money where her mouth was on supporting the attraction of of technical entities to DC. Brian talked a little earlier about Yelp moving big presence here. Fiscal Note and some of the other tech firms are already here in the downtown DC bid. So how do we keep that momentum going? Are there specific initiatives that the bid and the city can put in place to encourage the growth of the tech sector here in downtown DC?
I'll start. Part of it is lifestyle. Part of it is vibrancy. Keith talked a little bit about sort of the changing face of retail in the country that we are all beholden to. As most people probably know, experiential is big. People want to experience something when they go and shop increasingly. And so that the same thing is sort of happening on the worker front. I think that employers are increasingly finding that to be able to attract the best talent, and for technology and innovation companies, we hear this constantly from them, it is all about attracting the best talent, because we in the Washington region don't have as much talent as we do job opportunities in that sector. And so they are competing with Chicago and Philadelphia and Boston and New York and San Francisco for that talent. And so having places where people want to live, having places where people can come out of their office and experience not just lunch spots, because I know that in Washington, 20 years ago, it was all about that. What kind of lunch places am I going to be able to go to if I'm working? Now it's much more dynamic than that. It is what am I going to do after hours? What am I going to do before hours? What kinds of cultural activities can I be exposed to? People want increasingly a full experience when they go to work, not just a place to go to lunch. And so the more that we can continue to have vibrancy as a part of our landscape, I think that speaks volumes to how we can continue to be attractive. Jack mentioned I think that point in 1996 when we had no major league sports teams, and no matter how you feel about sports teams, they attract people. They're a venue. They're an entertainment option that people can take advantage of. And I think that the more that we have an opportunity to provide those opportunities, the more successful we'll ultimately be in attracting those kinds of companies.
Keith?
And to tag on to that, so the city is all about telling the story. And so we've been very successful over the past 4 years of going to a conference in Austin, Texas, South by Southwest, and marketing DC as the capital of inclusive innovation. We're authentic. A lot of cities say things, taglines like that, but we're diverse and we're inclusive. And so telling that story on that platform where we can have over 8,000 people come through our WeDC house in 2 days is phenomenal. And how we were received and how people are looking to come to DC for that talent or to relocate their business to DC. One thing that the partnership is going to be doing in conjunction with the Deputy Mayor's office is that we're going to bring that kind of festival, WeDC House, to DC in the fall in October. So just telling the story about how diverse DC is and how great a place it is to open a business or expand your business.
Thank you, panelists, for sharing your insights on the State of Downtown report with us today. And please join me, audience, in... Thank you. Saying thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks again to our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause. So we have a final speaker this morning, and we save the best for last. We do it every year. I'm always pleased and happy to introduce the mayor of the District of Columbia. Mayor Muriel Bowser has been a real partner with the Downtown DC bid, and not just the Downtown DC bid, with all the bids in the city. We are working with her administration on a number of really critical issues involving homelessness, issues involving Franklin Park and infrastructure. And I've got to say, the mayor has been a true partner with us. So please join me in welcoming, to give some remarks, Mayor Bowser.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with the bid to discuss the state of the downtown and always listen to the many great leaders in D.C. who are helping us continue to build a vibrant Washington, D.C. So I want to just say, Neil, how impressed I was with your interview skills. And it's always good, especially to get people to talk about what they do and what they think is important in a way that's conversational and in a way that we all can relate to. So I appreciate that. I want to recognize our Deputy Mayor for Economic Development, Brian Kenner, who I think has just done an outstanding job leading economic development in Washington, D.C. Brian has been innovative, he's been very creative, but also the systems that he's put in place have been very predictable. And we know that we can work with the development community, nonprofit housing community, with transportation providers and tech companies when they know what they can expect from us. And that has been our approach to how we've had consistent $100 million investment in affordable housing for each of the last years. And what Brian has called March Madness, where we make the development community aware of partnering opportunities with us to build housing and other development opportunities. And in our focus on tech, as you heard Keith talk about, how we see it as our distinct responsibility, and even more so now, to go out to other cities across our nation and indeed across our world so they know what we're about in Washington, D.C. It is important that they don't think that we're just the White House and the Capitol, but they know that we are a collection of neighborhoods, that we have a thriving business community, that 20 million people visit our city every year, and indeed, we're growing tech and have the sector that is growing jobs in our community is the private sector. And I recognize and I see it as my big opportunity is, of course, to focus on the economy of today. But we all need to be thinking about what our economy will be like in the next 10 years or 20 years, because the decisions that we make are really about that next economy. I had an opportunity to talk to a big employer that has the potential to move a lot of employees here. You may know what I'm talking about. And what I said to them was, we probably don't need you right now. I did. But I know that my job is to get ready for what's next for our economy. And we do very much need to be focused on how we will continue to attract private sector jobs and diversify our economy, because we know that the government sector will not be growing jobs significantly in our region. I was happy to hear Neil talk about the many partnerships that we have been able to be involved in over the last 3 years. We put a major focus on how we work with our federal government partners. I created, you may know, an Office for Federal and Regional Affairs. We never had one. We relied solely on the outstanding work of our Congresswoman to handle all of our federal issues. So now we have an office dedicated to working with the agencies and dedicated to working with the Congress on the big issues before us. Recently, I had the opportunity, I guess it's been a little over a year now, to send to the president a letter saying exactly what we needed their help with. I did also say what we wanted them to leave us alone about, but we know that there are many opportunities to partner with the feds because they have issues here that they need to focus on. The biggest one being Metro and how Metro can be, how the feds can be involved and how we come to a solution for Metro. Jack was here early. I'm sure he talked about that we're on the brink of a historic agreement with 3 jurisdictions that none of us really believe would happen before June. And we're able to get to dedicated, sustainable, and competitive funding for Metro, which has been a problem looking for a solution for 45 years, and we're very proud of that. But we've also been able to be systematic about the other things that we have in common with the feds, and that's the federal lands in our city. And it was a high priority for the downtown bid that we get some movement on Franklin Park, and we're almost there. And we have really come together in true partnership because we put up some money, the bid put up some money, and we worked very hard to come to an agreement with the National Park Service through the Congress. So we will continue to work on that. There are other successes that we have. The feds have a bridge that's literally falling into the Potomac. A year or so ago, we had no solution for that bridge. That's the Arlington Memorial Bridge, and now we do. Working with the representatives from Virginia, there is a plan and funding in place to rebuild that bridge, and so that's also critically important to us. There is the big one that's still out there that has our attention at RFK, and we're working on that. And so we look forward to be reporting to you next year at the State of the Downtown how far we've gotten. So those partnerships are important. And I was very happy to hear Neil talk about the Webster School. Something's got to give with the Webster School. We can't have a boarded up building in our downtown that the federal government owns. Something's got to give. We'll take it. We'll take it. So we'll talk to you about that. I think we have a fantastic idea, actually, right, Brian, about how we can put that in place. Let me just say a few words also about the fiscal health of our city. You heard from our outstanding CFO, whom I had the privilege of reappointing for another term in D.C. Jeff has really done a fantastic job at helping us with the nuts and bolts of how cities operate. And because of our position, we have the luxury of doing some things like actually counting all of our assets and determining their state of repair and what they need, and also making significant investments systematically through every budget and keeping those assets up. There's no reason why the Arlington Memorial Bridge should be falling in the Potomac. The reason is they never painted it or kept it up. And over the time, we know that's what happens. That's also why we have to make a huge infusion of resources into our metro, because over the last 45 years, there wasn't sufficient and consistent funding to keep it up. And so we have to continue to work on all of those things, and we will do exactly that. We know, though, that there is one significant threat to our growth. There's several. I talk about growing gaps and income inequality. That's one of the most significant threats to our growth. We can continue to attract more people. We hit 700,000 people in the first part of this year, which is an outstanding number for our region. And they all want to move around. They want to drive to work or use the metro or take a bike. And we know that people are living and working in places that they haven't before. And so the challenges to our transportation network and to our resilience and sustainability are significant. I am very happy that our DDOT team has been focused and continues to be focused on how we make the improvements necessary to improve our mobility. And we recognize, Jeff Marudian and his team, that requires balance. That requires that we have road networks that work, that we fix potholes. I heard somebody mention, and we're doing that with more resources than we've ever used before. But it also means that we make smart decisions about our transportation resources. So just a few months ago, we talked about our commitment to an electric fleet for the DC circulator. We've been investing in that technology to make our city smarter and greener. In fact, today outside, I am very pleased to announce that the arrival of our new electric bus fleet is now. It's today. So beginning on May the 1st, 14 battery electric buses will hit the streets, giving our city the largest fleet of electric buses on the East Coast. So congratulations to that. So in just the last 9 months, DC Circulator has added 40 buses that will help reduce harmful emissions, which will take us one step closer to our climate goals and our city one step closer to helping our nation meet the commitments that we made to the Paris Climate Accord. So I want to thank the Downtown Bid for all of the smart work that you're doing, for being willing partners to us on the things that aren't even fun and shiny and sexy, like cleaning up snow and making sure we're taking care of bus stops, and making sure that we're helping our most vulnerable residents. The Bid has been a huge partner with us in developing what we think is important, a part of our homeless prevention and reduction services, and creating a landlord fund. We got a big commitment from JP Morgan Chase to partner with us and to make the early investment in that fund. And we know that will take us a long way in helping people get into homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Mayor Bowser. Thanks to all of you for coming today, and thanks to all of you who participated in our forum or any other way to make our forum a success. I must say thank you to our staff who work hard year-round, but particularly to the communications team who worked to produce this wonderful State of Downtown report. Let's give them a round of applause. So, Mayor, I know the bus is parked outside, and the mayor's giving free shuttle rides to the Wilson Building and back. So if you're interested in experiencing our fleet of electric circulator buses, just step in front of Pennsylvania Avenue, and you can get a free ride. Thank you all for coming.